Damn, it's already been 10 years of Siege. Today, I want to kind of relive the last 10 years and go over everything that happened in Siege. Whether you're a brand new player and you're watching this video a year from now and you're playing Siege X for the first time and you want some lore, or you're a player that's been playing since the very first day that the alpha came out, this video is for you and everyone that loves Siege. Now, let me know down in the comments what year you did start playing, and after watching this video, let me know what year was your favorite. Rainbow Six Siege kicked off with a closed alpha on April 7th, 2015. Then an open beta on November 25th of the same year. The game went for a tough, realistic look with its graphics, and at the time this was much different than other games in the FPS genre. They were trying to go for more futuristic looks, so this boots on the ground gameplay was very interesting. Mixing that with all the destruction capability, kind of like Battlefield but different, it felt like Siege had a place of its own. There were some downsides, of course, because operator logos and attacking and defending logo was pretty cryptic and hard to figure out who was who and if you were attacking or defending just based off the logos, which is probably why they simplified the operator logos later on. I personally didn't play Rainbow Six Siege until year 1, so I couldn't experience Siege in the beta, but after watching the videos, you could tell that this laid the groundwork for what Siege would become. Each operation would have their own operators from real-world countries based on real-life militaries. Year 1, Season 1 launched with the name Black Ice, which of course became the most popular gun skin in Siege. At release, we got Buck and Frost from Canada, as well featuring the map Yacht. With the release, we also got a season pass system, which gave you early access to operators and cosmetics. They would later expand upon this within the years, and then completely kill it off for some reason. This season, you were also able to finally customize your guns, and Pro League began at the start of Season 1 on both PC and Xbox. Before Season 2, you weren't able to swap loadouts during the prep phase. Can you imagine memeing in casual with your friends, playing, let's say, Thermite, and only using a shotgun? Then to find yourself in ranked, and what can you do? Actually, Thermite shotgun was pretty powerful, I heard back in the day. And he had frag grenades. Season 2, which was Operation Dustline, came with 2 new operators, Valkyrie and Blackbeard from USA. This also featured the map border. This season in particular was the start of broken operators being added. Blackbeard could take a whole MW2 AC-130 kill streak to his shields and still be able to take gunfights afterwards. Did I also mention Siege didn't have an anti-cheat yet? Season 3 was Operation Skull Rain. Ubisoft was slowly building the foundation of Siege, finally adding an anti-cheat, which would become a meme to the community with BattleEye. This season featured Favela, a map that tested the limits of destruction. Literally everywhere could be broken and used for lines of sight. Of course, people were playing Buck and Sledge all the time. Caviar and Capital were the 2 new operators from Brazil. Caviar was, of course, a roamer's wet dream, since how good hiding spots were back in the early days of Siege with the lighting, which was much darker and gritty, and you were also able to manipulate the map a lot better before Ubisoft patched all the fun. By the way, shout out to Coconut Bra and Dangleberries back in the day. They were holding it down with some of these spots. Season 4 was Operation Red Crow, which was a pretty big season since we finally got a more portable hard breacher and Echo, who brought a yokai drone which can disorient enemies. The map was set in Japan and was called Skyscraper, which was a traditional Japanese estate high-rise. Now, did I mention that Habana looked much different back in the day before they changed her? We'll get into that later. We also got elite skins, which took your operators and gave them lore specific skins, and more importantly, gadget skins, which for some reason Ubisoft would never expand upon. The first 3 were Sledge, Capcan, and Thermite. Ubisoft added a level 20 minimum to play ranked to combat smurfing issues, which once again, they would always have this problem.
Looking back at year 1, we had a generational run with the Pro League skins specifically. For example, we got Goldust, Great Set, and even Glacier all in the span of 1 year. And I just don't get where we went wrong, because nothing tops these skins. It's crazy to think that people probably spent like $5 to $20 on all of these skins, and the markup value is crazy, because now if you go to the R6 marketplace, just for like one skin, it can go from anywhere from 10,000 R6 credits, which is somewhere around $80 to $100, up to even the hundreds of thousands of R6 credits.
Year 2 Operation Velvet Show released in February of 2017 and is considered by longtime fans of the game to be one of the best seasons to date. It included 2 operators from Spain, being Mirror and Jackal, with a fan favorite map, Coastline. Now, before Mirror was introduced, defense was a lot simpler. Mirror brought a lot of depthful gameplay which you haven't seen before. She manipulates the map in ways we never seen. There's a reason why she's one of the best defenders even now, 8 years later. Of course, Jackal was able to sniff feet. They introduced one-step matchmaking, which fixed the problem of having to back out of the main menu between games. And this season actually had one of my favorite changes to an operator. Glass was able to shoot through castle barricades with his sniper rifle and also through glass windows on the map plane. But next season was one of the most controversial seasons because I haven't mentioned the ongoing bugs and problems with the netcode and server. Season 2 was Operation Health. For the very first time, we would get no new operators or maps. Ubisoft promised they would be focused on game stability instead. They also promised us future updates with 2 seasons full of 3 operators instead of 2. This is because Operation Health was supposed to be the Polish season, which we would get Zofia and Ella later on in following seasons. This promise is quite controversial though, since people claim this update didn't help much, but I feel like they're just a load of BS. This season was great since we had big changes like hit registration overhaul, which helped gunfights feel more consistent, and actual hitboxes being a thing. One-step matchmaking was fully implemented, and did I mention alpha packs? Players were finally able to get their favorite Black Ice out of packs, and later on, Ubisoft would capitalize on the success of alpha packs and actually make events based on packs. Now, the next few seasons I'm going to be talking about is considered the prime of Rainbow Six Siege. For many reasons, but mostly the content at this time felt fresh, and it seemed like they were really building upon Operation Health. Season 3 was absolutely huge. Operation Blood Orchid proved Ubisoft was right with the idea to take a season off to work on the game. We got 3 insane operators. Ying and Legion were from Hong Kong, and a fan favorite, Ella, being one half of the Polish operators, the second being next season, of course. It featured the map theme park, and this was the start of some really fun seasons. Ella was beloved so much for her huge magazine on her SMG that had one of the fastest fire rates with little recoil. Her being a 3-speed, having impacts, and being the first operator with a scope pistol. Literally every roamer's dream. The next season, White Noise, released December 5th, 2017, and was the perfect time for Christmas break. We got another 3 operators, 2 from South Korea, Vigil and Dokkaebi, and the third being Ella's sister, Zofia. We also got the map Tower, which was a high-rise skyscraper in South Korea. It was unique since you had to rappel out of each spawn to get inside the map. We also seen something not too common, and that's passive abilities. Zofia, when down, can pick herself up, and no other operator was able to do that unless they had Rook armor. Vigil was a fan favorite since his ability to disrupt drone intel was unlike any other operator we've seen. And lastly, Dokkaebi was a spitting image of what's to come in later seasons with global utility. We also started to see the beginning of the old Siege gritty look slowly be washed away with map and texture updates. Year 3, here's where players started to feel like Ubisoft was taking the skill out of Siege. March 6, 2018, Operation Chimera was released with super mixed reviews. We got one Russian operator, Finka, and one French operator, Lion. Lion literally had wall hacks. Yes, I'm not kidding, literal wall hacks by pressing one button. Both Finka and Lion had global abilities that both helped teammates and destroyed enemies. Lion could make the entire enemy team stand still, and if they move even the slightest taddest bit, they get their entire body outlined by wall hacks. Back in the day, if somebody had stick drift on a controller, this was a nightmare. You were being spotted and you were screwed. Finka was interesting though because she was the first healer on attack, and she could even make her recoil easier to handle. And we also got our very first official in-game event called Outbreak. This was a beloved mode, and the cosmetics are awesome. Sadly, Ubisoft would turn this idea into R6 Extraction, but we'll get into that later in the video. June 7, 2018 was Operation Parabellum. We got 2 defenders from Italy, Alibi and Maestro. We also got a fan favorite map, Villa, and a lot changed this season. Echo got 2 drones, LMGs got better slowly, 3-speed operators became slower while 1-speeds became quicker. They added a new secondary gadget, the bulletproof camera. They removed the old diffuser animation and created a whole new one that's more realistic. Personally, I preferred the old animation because how silly it looked, but I do understand why they changed it after all this time. Ranked also received a new pick and ban system, so players could add another level of strategy to their gameplay. Personally, after playing and using it for 6 years, I think it just slows down the game too much. But that's just me. This season was just fun based off the simple changes for ranked and operator buffs, so I can't really complain. Operation Grim Sky was the 3rd season of the year. We got one USA operator Maverick and the one UK defender Clash. This season was interesting because we got another hard breach that was super hard to use, but rewarding once you master him. On the other side, we got the only defender with a shield, and the community was split with this idea since shields have been notorious hated, and they've always struggled with balancing with these types of operators. Ubisoft added their first rework map, which was Hereford base. They completely redesigned the layout for a better flow and balance, and they achieved this very well, but after a few seasons, it was out of the ranked pool. Around this time, Habana's appearance did change. And people were mad for some reason. The final season of the year was called Wind Bastion, which introduced 2 operators from Morocco. They were added with a new map, Fortress, which had a pretty flawed map layout, but it was cool overall because it was a new map. Cade and Nomad were the operators added. Cade brought another choice for wall denial and mainly hatches, which was definitely needed because at the time it was only bandit and mute, and basically hatches were free roam, which was kind of crappy on the defensive end, but Cade was definitely this needed operator. Nomad was interesting operator this season because her gadget was for flank watch, but the problem was it went off literally immediately, which made for some really funny, but if you're on the other end of it, irritating situations. This is the same season we saw Line get nerfed with the scan duration much lower and effectiveness reduced. Now, something I didn't mention was Cade and Nomad's secondary pistol. Imagine if Han Solo was playing in Siege. That's basically what it was. People weren't using Cade and Nomad's primary. They were literally going around with this pocket sniper. Sadly enough, in future updates, they would nerf this, but at the time when I used it, and especially when I was on Xbox, it was super fun to play with, but pretty annoying to play against. Year 4 kicked off with Burnt Horizon, which started with 2 operators from Australia, Gridlock and Mozzie. Mozzie was a fan favorite since his kit was well versed with a gun that had a flashy reload and a brand new secondary shotgun, the Super Shorty. Mozzie was great because he was a roamer and he denied all sorts of drone economy and can take control of drones, which we have never seen before as a defender. We also got an interesting map, Outback, which was alright. Like, it was a new map, so can't really complain. It took them about 4 years to add this in, and that is reverse friendly fire. Team killing has always been an issue in Siege, so I'm so surprised it took them 4 years to get this into the game. And it was a meme. I remember when people used to 4-stack and they would TK over literally anything. You take somebody's operator, you don't clutch around, if you literally talk and you're not a man, like all these reasons would be the reason why you would get TK'd. It was quite insane. Deployable shields were also reworked. They now had little slits in them that gave you vision. And if you guys are completely new to Siege, this is what old shields used to look like. It was absolutely horrendous. Ashe was nerfed as well, losing her breaching charges because they just can't balance her apparently. The following season, Phantom Sight, we got one Denmark operator Knock and another US operator Warden. Cafe got a much needed rework and Ranked saw some adjustments, so Rank resets every season with a unified MMR system. Glass got nerfed again. You would only be able to use his thermal scope if you stand completely still for long periods of time. It felt like a filler season, to be honest. Season 3 was one of the most controversial since the release, since skins literally made you invisible. Ember Rise dropped with 2 operators, Amaru from Peru and Goyo from Mexico, releasing with another reworked map, Canal. We were entering a new meta, the utility meta. Since Goyo had multiple shields with fire canisters on them, it made him an instant S tier operator. Amaru was kind of like a throwaway character, a little bit fun just to troll or play super aggro with. But once again, what I was saying about the controversial meta was they dropped these Ember Rise skins, which at the time you would be able to wear on maps like Villa, Cafe, and it was legit the most effective camouflage known to man. Like, you did not know what you were getting swung by. This is also the season that they added champion rank. It was a rank above diamond, and only the top 9,999 players could achieve it as long as they were at least 5,000 MMR. We also got a mini test battle pass, and Legion was nerfed, so his goo mines no longer dealt damage on impact, which would, of course, they would revert years later. Now, the champion rank was quite interesting because at the time in ranked 1.0, it was actually difficult to get that unless you were boosting with unranks like a lot of people during that time. The last season of the year definitely solidified the utility meta since one of the two operators came out was basically a more flexible Jaeger. Wamai would slowly take the role of Jaeger he once had, and I'm going to explain why. Wamai was from Kenya and Kali was from India. Theme Park also saw an adjustment in layout. They completely removed a roamer favorite part of the map, being train. A lot of the community was unhappy when Ubisoft decided to slow down ADSing this season. The community felt that they were trying to make the game easier for players who weren't better mechanically. The best change was the limb penetration system. Made gunfights feel rewarding, so if you place your crosshair head level, then you would get more consistent headshots, for example. Now, Wamai was a more portable Jaeger, like I was saying, because he was able to place his gadgets in unlimited amount of areas as long as you're just throwing them properly. And mixing him with Jaeger with all these shields made it hell to try to clear all this utility as attacker, which why it's called the utility meta, of course. Starting year 5, Operation Void Edge, Ubisoft tried to experiment more with operators. You saw this with Yana, who is from the Netherlands, and Oryx from Jordan. Yana would use a hologram clone that would act as a human-like drone, and Oryx was the literal Kool-Aid man. Around this time, it felt very hit or miss with operators. Overall, Oregon saw a rework, and it has been some time since we saw a new map at this point. Season 2 was Operation Steel Wave, which was the last time we saw a 2-operator season. We got Ace from Norway and Malusi from South Africa. We got a really stupid rework being House. It was the first casual map reworked. It felt unneeded since the resources could have been used better in my opinion. Maybe to create a new map or even improve a competitive map, which most of the ranked maps definitely needed some changes around that time. Before the season, each region would have their own separate MMRs. So if you were located in North America and you tried to play Europe, you would have a whole different rank. So for example, if I'm champion on NA, I would be unranked on EU. So this season, they decided to delete that, and region-wide, you would be the same rank. This season changed, so there would be no more separate ranks basically between regions. We also got a new secondary gadget for defenders, being the proxy alarms. Season 3, being Operation Shadow Legacy, was hands down the biggest season of the year. We only got one new operator, being Zero, aka Sam Fisher from Splinter Cell, who brought his Argus cameras on attack, which drill through surfaces for intel. A much needed addition was the change to the ping system. They added Ping 2.0, which added color-coded pings for better team communication. A lot of people in the following years would say this took a lot of the skill away from communication and made it easy to act off yellow pings without the enemy's knowledge of it. Ubisoft would try on the test server to add some noises to the pings. Let's say if you're an enemy and you're being Z-pinged or yellow pinged, they would actually hear like a mini bleeping sound, but this never came to the live build, sadly. Gun scope saw an overhaul as well with the new 1.5 times scope, 2.0 scope, and more, slowly introducing the TDM meta, which we'll talk about more later on. Chalet saw a rework, making it feel modern, and lastly, a second hard breach was added for the attackers. This season, we also got a long-anticipated rework, being Chachanka. Before, Chachanka would have a turret that you would deploy down, and you would basically be a stationary LMG. They took his turret away and made him a lot more mobile. Adding a fire grenade launcher, and his primary was a LMG that could easily destroy the map and create lines of sight. The following season, being the final season of the year, would be Neon Dawn. The single new operator we received was Aruni from Thailand with the reworked map Skyscraper. It's kind of mind-blowing how they did all this rework for Skyscraper, yet they have little mobility for you to rotate around the map as an attacker, nor even more hatches to create more depthful attacks instead of this linear horizontal pushes that you mostly have to do on this map. Habana got a much needed change though. She can choose how many X Kairos to use. It's kind of weird to think before you were only able to use 6 pellets at a time. Definitely seems super wasteful. Diffuser pickup was completely revamped with having to stop and look down at it. Year 6 started with Operation Crimson Heist with Flores and a reworked border. They made it easier to rotate in and out of areas and also changed a big problem with Army Locker's wall, making some of the floor concrete. Before, I remember people used to do a mirror strat and the easiest counter would be to go outside front door and just ass charge and easily pop the mirror. Now it felt like defenders got a huge buff with this. To be honest, not very much was added this season besides the match replay system, which was of course in beta, so Varsity Gaming would have to wait a little while to start his replay hacker series. Goyo was changed, taking away his shields and leaving him with only canisters. This would mark the utility meta's death and start of the TDM meta. North Star was the second season, releasing with Thunderbird from Canada. She was a good second healer and gave you an option between Doc or herself. Favela got a weird rework and wouldn't stay in the ranked mode very long, just for a few seasons, which is kind of odd because they put so much effort into these maps just to throw them out after. Smoke's gas got changed and would no longer pierce through walls, while Malusi was nerfed so her Banshees finally have a vulnerability when active. Before, you would have to actually destroy the gadgets using actual utility and not bullets. That was a nightmare, by the way. Crystal Guard was probably the best season this year, and that's because we had 3 maps slightly reworked, which was Bank, Clubhouse, Coastline. Instead of completely revamping these maps, they decided to just make minor tweaks and took feedback from the community, which was actually really good. I love this season just because of that 3 map change. Armor was also converted into HP to make it easier for players to better understand health ratings, because before it would be like a 3 armor 1 speed operator and you were kind of confused. You were like, what does that armor really mean? So now it was more explained just by your HP. Now we got our first operator that is trans, and it's Osa from Croatia. Their ability was a transparent bulletproof deployable shield on attack, and to be honest, it seemed like a game changer. I remember the first day trying to play ranked against that, and I felt so frustrated because it seemed like nobody ever had C4s or impacts for these shields, and even if you popped one, they had another one. The final season of the year was High Caliber, that was released with a reworked Outback. Thorn was the operator, and they had a Razor Bloom shell that explode based on proximity. Bulletproof cameras got buffed and now can rotate and shoot EMP bursts. Oh yeah, and a huge HUD overhaul. Finka saw obvious buff, finally allowing her adrenaline surges to revive down teammates. I don't know why it took them 4 years to come up with this idea, but whatever. Oh, and by the way, Twitch drones can finally jump. Yippee. It was overall a pretty boring season, especially to be at the end of the year. They even tested a drone after death, which allowed attackers to control drones after being eliminated, which was interesting, but this was only in the TTS at the time. Huge controversy though. After year 6, Ubisoft had to come with a huge bang, and with year 7 they started with a huge bang. Operator Azami from Japan changed the entire gameplay of defenders and attackers. They were throwable bulletproof walls that can patch holes or even create one-ways or even act as shields. Yes, they were bulletproof at the time of the release. I don't know if you remember that, but yeah. We saw our very first map since 2019 being Emerald Plains, which was set in an Irish type vibe. Finally, we got a TDM mode and attacker repick. Players on attack could change operators during the drone phase to counter whatever the defenders were doing. This was a hope to balance how powerful defending was. Vector Glare was a pretty boring season though. Ubisoft added Sense, the first non-binary operator who has a rolling device that creates a massive digital screen for cover basically. It's almost like Viper on, from Valorant, except you're not able to take damage if someone runs through it, and honestly anybody can just run through it, like nothing will happen. We also got a team deathmatch only map called Close Quarter. I don't like, cool I guess, but like yippee. I wasn't jumping up for joy when I saw that. I was like, damn, this is going to be a boring season. The best thing to come out of this season, though, was shooting range that allowed players to test guns, recoil, and attachments, and further seasons, they would actually expand upon this and do a really good job with it. The next season, Brutal Storm, was another boring season. Only added one new operator, which was Grim, who can shoot these digital bees, which when enemies were in the area would get red pinged. But here's the thing, you weren't able to bounce the bees. It would take so long to pull out the bees and actually shoot them. And it honestly felt like a cheap version of Lion, for example. He was super underwhelming. Ubisoft thought they were deadass cooking adding Stadium, which was a game mode from the past seasons. Like, they created a whole new map for this, and the game mode was cool. But the problem is they added it into ranked, and the map is literally just like 2 or 3 maps, like Clubhouse, Border, and I think Coastline all in one. It just does not flow well as a ranked map. A good change, though, we got Impact EMPs, which made more operators flexible, and it was better for balancing reasons, and you just didn't have to bring a Thatcher or Maverick to deal with walls. You can have more flexibility and make more underwhelming operators more useful. Finka was nerfed, and her ability no longer allowed you to revive teammates when downed, which I don't know, that doesn't make sense to me, but you know, it's all good because it is a one click of a button type thing. So my theory is this year really sucked because they were focusing so much of the dev team towards extraction, which was basically the Outbreak game mode into a whole new game. And I don't know why they did this, because even though they had a bunch of cool skins added into the game, I feel like it would have been much better if they added this mode into Rainbow Six Siege instead of making people pay out like a $40 expense just to buy a new game. I think it could have honestly been a cool season if they just fleshed it out well, and maybe this year wouldn't have felt so bland. The next year, year 8, Commanding Force kicked off season 1 of year 8 with the new operator Brava, who has a drone that can hack defenders' gadgets to turn them against defenders. It was the start of Mousetrap on console as well, which was absolutely groundbreaking to the industry, because before that, usually the only thing that companies could do is possibly ban players, and that was rare because they didn't have anything to really detect these type of inputs. But Ubisoft started something that was really good and front forward for the industry. It seemed like the start of year 8 was really big because they were doing some really good changes. Not only did they release Bravo, which was a super interesting operator, and you can have unlimited amount of interactions with the round and maps and operators, but they even made good changes, like reload canceling was removed. Back in the day, people used to just spray their entire mag and then do this reload cancel bug, and then they would basically just refill their ammo. Now you would have to actually reload entirely to get all of your ammo back, and that was a solid change. Operation Dread Factor, which was season 2, they added a Swedish operator named Finir. His traps were basically little gas mines, and at the time this was pretty broken at first because these things could not be shot, and people found all types of weird spots that it would pierce through some part of the map and it would basically be invisible. Just like kind of like Malusi when she was first released, you have to use explosives to destroy it, and it was so annoying because he had like 4 of them. Consulate got a full rework for the better balance, but depending on who you talk to, this balance was good or bad. Finally, Grim was buffed so his bees would activate faster, and you can finally bounce them off walls and stuff. I can't tell you how good this change was and how excited I was for this operator to actually be useful. The very next season, Operation Heavy Metal, we received Ram from South Korea, whose gadget was a bulletproof giant drone tank that destroyed walls, floors, and gadgets. The only way to deal with it is the little red canister on the back, or to waste a C4 or some type of explosive on it. It was overall a slow season that was carried by Ram, to be honest. The final season of year 8 was Operation Deep Freeze. We got a new map called Lair. Alongside that, operator Tubby or Tubero from Portugal. Tubby had these canisters that freeze gadgets and slow defenders. It was an interesting concept, but for some reason, even 2 years after this operator was released, we still have an FPS bug on PC. You basically get that gadget thrown anywhere on the map and your FPS drops to a quarter of what you should be getting. It's really annoying and stupid. I might be over exaggerating, but usually I lose like 50 FPS, okay? A controversial change was the frost mats were reworked and no longer downed enemies. Enemies could break themselves out of the mats, and once you break yourself out of the mat, you would have this like slow effect. You wouldn't be able to sprint, and I liked it, but the entire community said frost was useless. But typical gaming community, they just overreact it. Year 9 started with Demos from Greece. He basically has this drone that can scan enemies and pick to target them and basically give them unlimited information and wall hacks. But on the other end, it gives the defender a chance to either fight you back or just have that information of where you're positioned. It was really interesting. This season was huge though because shields were reworked, no longer able to hip fire. Operators can now check themselves left or right, reload, and use gadgets like secondary gadgets without having to drop their shield. And what's cool was operators basically can orc dash through barricades with a single melee attack. Ubisoft also wanted to go back to the roots and get rid of 1.5 times scope, 2.0, and 3-point sights. And basically they added old ACOG back with a larger zoom of a 2.5. What's cool is iron sights got a speed increase for the ADS speed, and non-magnifying scopes saw a 5% increase ADSing. Operation New Blood was supposed to be huge since Recruit was being reworked, and there was all types of conspiracies going around. I honestly thought that Recruit, when he was getting buffed, he was going to have the ability to steal one of the attackers or defenders' primary gadget. And I know that sounds kind of wild, but I thought they were doing something big because they really hyped this up. But instead, we got Striker and Sentry. Basically just Recruit, except you can't use 5 of them. And you get, I guess, a scope, and you can customize your class, which is cool. But overall, it was underwhelming, even though Sentry is really good. Solus was heavily nerfed, slowly reworking her gadget. Same with Finir, you're now able to shoot the gadgets when opened. Barbed wire, of course, gets to deal damage when you're walking into it, just like the old Year 1 days. And Ubisoft made the silly idea of adding a membership system, which gives you exclusive skins and banners. I don't know who or why anybody would subscribe to this, by the way. Like, the year pass was so much better, even though actually it's way less money as well. Screw the membership pass. Within this year, R6 Extraction would basically stop getting support from the devs. They decided to just stop funding all of that, and once again just wasted potential on a game for some reason that I don't know why they even decided to develop this game. Season 3 added Scopos, an operator in a wheelchair that controlled 2 robotic bodies, offering you to be in 2 places at the same time, one inactive, one active. The inactive little robot is basically just a shield that's a bulletproof cam inside of it. And this was really interesting because also at the time we were getting some really silly memes once this was revealed, and I'm not gonna lie, I was all for it because there were some bangers out there. I'm not gonna lie, guys. The final season added a long-awaited Blackbeard buff, which basically made Blackbeard an actual shield that's movable, kind of like Blitz, but with an AR. He was a very, very, very strong operator, but some things that get overlooked are some of the basic reworks, like Thunderbird. Her gadget can now heal people to 100 HP or their max HP as long as they don't get shot or any type of damage inflicted. And on the other hand, if a attacker tries to steal the HP from the Thunderbird stations, they won't be able to unless Brava hacks it. Overall, just a good change overall. Sense also saw a gadget. Basically, you can't see anybody through Sense gadgets, and Glass can no longer see through their sight as well. We also got introduced crossplay for the very first time. Cheater match cancellation as well, which was a big one that was going crazy on Twitter. Siege Cup beta was also introduced, which I'm not gonna lie, Siege Cup is still very flawed. They need better rewards. They need a better reason to actually play this. They also need a losers bracket that makes sense, that, you know, whatever. A good addition was badges. Badges can now be put on your player card, and more of them will be unlocked over time. They also added Phantom player lobby balancing, which better measures the skill of each team and then categorizes you in specific teams that actually make sense. And now going into year 10, which is Operation Prep phase, we got this cool new operator that cuts off doors like Castle on Attack. We didn't get that much content as they were prepping for Siege X, and that's where today's video ends, because we are now waiting Siege X. We did get the reveal for Siege X, and that's going to be amazing. We do have this new game mode, Dual Front, which is quite interesting. It's basically a 6v6 game mode where, as an attacker or defender, you decide how you play around this map, and you have to take certain areas of the map, and you can be a respond. It's very interesting, but I do hope Siege X is more successful just based off of the 5v5 game mode, because the audio is enhanced. It's amazing. The graphics are really cool, and I really love the modernized feel, and I'm excited for the next 10 years of Siege X. Who knows, guys? When I'm 35, I might be making another 10 years of Siege, or 20 years of Siege. Oh my god, I'm getting old. Anyways, guys, let me know, what was your first season, what was your favorite season, and what was your favorite change overall. Now, if you guys made it to the very end of this video, let me know just by commenting Garfield loves lasagna with ranch on top of it. A very long comment, but thank you so much for making it to the very end, guys, and I hope